12. Mysteries beneath the darkened veil. In the heart of Doskvol, north of the Six Towers district, stood the Shadow's Den, a refuge cloaked in enigma and secrecy. As the crows entered, the atmosphere shifted, the familiar sense of aged wood and rich spirits enveloping them like a shroud. The dim light flickered from candles placed strategically throughout the room, casting dancing shadows that seemed to whisper tales of old. Velvet curtains hung tightly across the windows, shielding the den from the prying eyes of the outside world, while ornate tapestries adorned the walls, their dark hues concealing hidden stories of intrigue. Behind the bar, Ezra Nightshade, the formidable proprietor, presided over the establishment with an air of quiet authority. His steely gaze surveyed the room, noting every patron, every shift of movement. Despite his stoic demeanor, a glimmer of mischief sparkled in his eyes, hinting at a depth that spoke of uncharted adventures. Rabbit's Foot stepped forward, a grin on his face, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "Ezra, old friend. We need a private table for our meeting." Ezra nodded, a slight smirk crossing his lips. "Your usual corner is ready. Your guest is already waiting." He gestured toward the back, where shadows clung tighter and the atmosphere thickened with anticipation. As they made their way to the secluded table, Jack, always quick with a quip, leaned in with a grin. "I hope this guest comes with some interesting news. I'm in the mood for a good tale." Harry, the ever-cautious member of the group, added, "As long as it doesn't involve any wild schemes that land us in hot water, I'm on board." "Ah, but where's the fun in that?" Rabbit's Foot teased, nudging Harry playfully. "Life is too short to be boring, my friend." The table came into view, and sitting there was Constantine, an old ally with a reputation that preceded him. His presence was magnetic, drawing attention without effort. Clad in dark robes adorned with arcane symbols, he looked every bit the part of a sorcerer with secrets locked away in his gaze. "Crows," he greeted, a sly smile on his lips. "What brings you to my den of shadows?" "Good to see you, Constantine," Rabbit's Foot replied, taking a seat across from him. "We have some business that might interest you." "Business?" Constantine raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. "You know I don't get involved unless the stakes are worthwhile." Jack leaned forward, his tone conspiratorial. "I'm planning something big, but I need a way to use magic, specifically, a teleportation spell I've seen you use before." Constantine stroked his chin, his expression turning contemplative. "Ah, teleportation. A tricky spell, indeed. You do know it requires precision and understanding of the recipient's destination, right?" "Yeah, I've seen you do it," Jack pressed, eager for details. "Can't you just teach me?" "There's more to it than just teaching," Constantine replied, leaning back in his chair, the flickering candlelight casting sharp angles across his face. "You can store spells in special vessels, allowing non-magical individuals to use them. However, the creation of such a vessel is intricate and fraught with danger. It's not a task for the faint of heart. Is there a simpler way?" Rabbit's Foot asked, his fingers drumming lightly on the table. "You must have something up your sleeve." Constantine's eyes gleamed with mischief. "Funny you should ask. I have a mission in Doskvol, and I could use some capable hands." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Join me on this venture, and any interesting magical trinkets we find along the way are yours to keep. A fair trade, wouldn't you agree?" Constantine's expression shifted, growing serious. "There's an old man in Doskvol named Mr. Trickerium. He's a recluse now, but he was once one of the founders of the Magic Studies course at Charhollow University. He's powerful and cunning, but he hasn't been seen in years. Rumor has it he's locked himself away in his house, and I received an urgent message, a plea for help, from someone inside." "Disappeared, you say?" Harry interjected, his brow furrowing. "That sounds like trouble waiting to happen." "Exactly," Constantine continued, his gaze intense. "I intend to infiltrate his house, find my target, and rescue her. But it's a dangerous place to be. Trickerium isn't just any old man. He's a master of magic, and he has a reputation for traps and cunning defenses. Jack leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. I appreciate the ambition, but magic isn't exactly our forte. How do you expect us to handle his defenses? Harry nodded, his expression serious. We're skilled in many things, but we're not trained mages. This could turn into a nightmare quickly. Harlequina chimed in, her voice light yet sharp. You could help us with a little bit of magic, couldn't you, Constantine? We have a heist coming up, and I'd love some spells to sweeten the deal. Constantine smirked, his interest piqued. I'm always open to negotiation. If the price is right, I might consider aiding you in your future endeavors. But first, let's focus on this rescue mission. Rabbit's foot leaned forward, pulling a folded letter from his pocket. Speaking of deals, take a look at this. He laid the letter on the table, its surface marked with intricate symbols. Have you ever seen anything like it? Constantine examined the letter closely, his brow furrowing as recognition washed over him. This is from a private contractor known as Mr. Nigma. He's a clever one, but also dangerous. You'll want to tread carefully. Rabbit nodded, a determined glint in his eye. I'll investigate this further. If there's a connection to Trickerium or something bigger, we need to know. Constantine returned his gaze to the group, his voice steady. Now, are you willing to help me with this mission or not? Rabbit's foot, always the voice of the group, grinned and nodded. Count us in. If you're getting us involved, we'll see it through. We're no strangers to danger, after all. Good, Constantine replied, a hint of relief in his eyes. However, I must inform you that I might need to guide you from outside. Trickerium has placed a spell on me, preventing me from entering his home ever again. Jack raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Really? That doesn't sound like something easily fixed. What do you propose? Rabbit's grin widened, an idea sparking in his mind. I think I can help with that. I have my tricks, they hold ancient power. If I perform a ritual, I should be able to break that spell and allow you to accompany us. Constantine's eyes gleamed with cautious optimism. If you can do that, it would make things significantly easier. But be careful, spells can have unforeseen consequences. Leave it to me, Rabbit said confidently, though an undercurrent of anxiety flickered beneath the surface. I'll prepare tonight and meet you both tomorrow at the address you provide. With a plan set in motion, the crows finalized their discussions, exchanging laughter and banter as they left the Shadow's den, their hearts filled with a sense of purpose. That night, Rabbit's foot found himself alone in a secluded space, the dim light of candles flickering around him. The air felt thick with anticipation as he prepared for the ritual. He sat cross-legged on the floor, the Millennium Ring resting on his palm, its intricate design glimmering in the candlelight. As he began to chant the ancient words, the shadows around him seemed to deepen, swirling as if alive. The energy from the ring pulsed in response, sending a thrill through his veins. He could feel the power building, the atmosphere crackling with magic. But as the incantation intensified, Rabbit caught sight of dark figures approaching from the edges of the candlelight. Their forms flickered like wisps of smoke, and a chill ran down his spine. What is that? He focused harder, forcing the shadows to retreat. I won't be distracted, he murmured to himself, determination flooding his heart. I have to finish this. The shadows encroached closer, whispering threats and promises that clawed at the edges of his mind. Doubt began to creep in. What if I can't control it? What if I fail? But he steeled himself, recalling his purpose, to help Constantine and the crows. As he uttered the final words of the incantation, a bright light erupted from the ring, pushing back the darkness surrounding him. The energy surged, enveloping him in a warm embrace. Rabbit felt the weight of the spell upon Constantine lift, the air growing lighter as the magic settled. When the light faded, Rabbit took a deep breath, exhilaration washing over him. He had done it, but the close call with the shadows haunted him. That was too close for comfort, he thought, shaking off the lingering anxiety. Next time, I'll be ready. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the gates of Mr. Trickerium's house. The crows gathered, tension palpable in the air as they prepared for what lay ahead. Constantine turned to Rabbit's foot, his expression serious. "Have you done your job?" Rabbit's foot smirked, confidence masking the apprehension bubbling beneath the surface. "There's only one way to find out," he replied, clenching the millennium ring tightly in his pocket. With a nod, Constantine stepped forward, pushing open the wrought iron gates. He hesitated for a moment, his heart pounding in his chest as he crossed the threshold. The seconds ticked by, but nothing happened. He turned back to the others, a mix of relief and uncertainty washing over his features. It must have worked. Let's move. They approached the front door, the imposing structure looming before them. Jack knocked firmly, but the sound echoed into silence. "Well, that's reassuring," he muttered, looking around at the perfectly manicured garden surrounding the house. "Something's not right," Harry said, glancing at the well-tended plants. "If this place is so secluded, why is the garden so well maintained?" Jack's keen eye caught sight of a gardener working diligently in a corner. "I'll check it out," he said, striding over to the man. "Excuse me. Have you seen Mr. Trickerium around?" The gardener looked up, a hint of confusion on his face. "No, I haven't seen him in ages. He doesn't come out much, but his payments arrive like clockwork. He leaves the money by the window." Jack furrowed his brow, considering the implications. "So, he's been living there all this time." As the others gathered around, Harlequina began to investigate the perimeter of the house. "All the windows are closed tight," she reported, returning to the group. "And it's odd, there are no back or side doors. Just this one front entrance." Constantine and Harry exchanged worried glances. "I can feel it," Harry said, his voice low. "There's an immense amount of magical energy radiating from this house. It's unsettling." "Too much power for one man to wield," Constantine agreed, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the structure. "We need to find a way inside." After a brief deliberation, Constantine took a bold step and opened the letterbox. "Trickerium. We know you're in there. Come answer," he shouted, his voice echoing into the silence. Jack, eager to amplify the effect, chimed in. "We're here for a purpose. We have Constantine as a prisoner." His tone dripped with bravado, an attempt to fool the old man into revealing himself. A moment of silence followed, and then they heard the unmistakable sound of several locks being undone on the other side of the door. With a creak, it opened just enough for a pair of cautious eyes to peer out. Rabbit's foot and Harry exchanged glances, adrenaline surging through them. "Now!" Rabbit shouted, and together they forced the door open, bursting into the dimly lit interior, closely followed by Jack. As they entered, an unsettling feeling washed over Harry. He couldn't put his finger on it, but something felt wrong. A chill slithered down his spine. "I don't like this," he muttered, scanning the shadowy corners of the room. "Mr. Trickerium." Rabbit called out, but the response came not from the shadows, but from the ground, where the old man lay, glaring at them with fierce indignation. "What manner of ruffians barges into an old man's home like this?" he shouted, his voice hoarse yet commanding. "You should have more respect." Rabbit, taken aback but determined, offered a hand. "I'm here to help you up, sir." Trickerium recoiled, cursing as he waved his hand dismissively. "Keep your hands to yourself, you whelp." "Come on, let me help," Harry said, stepping forward. Trickerium turned his gaze on him, a hint of disdain mingling with a strange curiosity. "Boy, help me up, will you?" Reluctantly, Harry extended his hand. The moment Trickerium grasped it, there was a sharp crack, followed by a plume of smoke. In an instant, both of them vanished, leaving the room empty save for the echoes of their presence. "Damn it!" Constantine exclaimed from outside, his expression shifting to one of urgency. "He's teleported him. We need to find Harry quickly, or he'll be in grave danger." Panic surged through the group as they realized the gravity of the situation. "What do we do?" Jack asked, glancing around the now silent house. "We search the house," Constantine ordered, his tone clipped. "We must find out where they've gone before it's too late." Constantine took a deep breath, steeling himself for the task ahead. "It's now or nothing," he murmured to himself as he stepped through the heavy front doors of Trickerium's house. The moment he crossed the threshold, a strange sensation washed over him, like a wave pulling away from the shore. He turned sharply to Harlequina, who was hesitating just outside. "The house, it saps our power," he explained, urgency creeping into his voice. "This will have to be a fight of intelligence today. We need to be clever." Harlequina's eyes widened, her nerves bubbling beneath the surface. "Great, just what I needed to hear," she replied, her voice shaky. She lingered by the door, uncertainty reflected in her posture as she prepared herself for whatever lay ahead. Jack, Rabbit's Foot, and Constantine exchanged determined glances before splitting off to search the house. The atmosphere inside felt oppressive, every shadow a potential threat. As they ventured deeper, they all noted how strangely empty the house was, yet everything appeared unnaturally clean and well-kept. A sense of unease settled over them, as if the place were too perfect, too still. "Hey, I'll go back out and see what's taking Harlequina so long," Jack suggested, turning to retrace his steps. But as he approached the door, an invisible barrier pushed against him, halting his progress. "What the? I can't get out. Trapped, we're stuck here until we find Trickerium and convince him to let us go." Rabbit stated flatly, his brow furrowed with concern. "This is a horrible situation," Constantine muttered, frustration building within him. "We need to regroup and figure out where he might be hiding." As they moved cautiously through the house, Constantine's attention was caught by a bookshelf that seemed out of place. A glint of metal caught his eye, and he moved closer, revealing a hidden staircase behind the rack. "Guys, come here," he called, excitement lacing his words. "There's a secret staircase." Rabbit followed, his curiosity piqued. "There's a high chance Harry could be down there," he deduced, glancing back to where they had come. "Let's move." Just as they prepared to descend, Harry materialized beside them, startling them all. He looked visibly shaken, pain etched across his features. "What happened to you?" Constantine asked, concern replacing his earlier excitement. "I was teleported straight into a cage in a windowless room," Harry gasped, struggling to catch his breath. Trickerium kept circling around, looking for something and complaining about how these robberies have to stop today. He said we'd regret ever daring to enter his house. Jack's eyes widened. "What did he want with you?" Harry shuddered, recollecting the experience. "He had a massive pile of junk beside my cage. I saw him find this small flask with some kind of liquid inside. He kept calling me, boy, like I was some thief who had been stealing from him for weeks." "Sounds like he's lost his mind," Rabbit muttered, his expression darkening. "What did he want with that liquid?" "Before he could force me to drink it, I used my port key to teleport out," Harry explained, his voice tense. "But I only appeared for a second outside the house. It felt like the house wanted me back inside, like it was trying to drag me in. It hurt so much, I thought I was going to die if I didn't get back." "Great," Jack said, his tone grim. "So not only is he powerful, but the house itself is a trap. We need to go down there and ambush Trickerium," Constantine said, determination sharpening his voice. "We'll get answers, and we'll find out what's really going on here." As the crows observed the staircase, the air grew heavy with an ominous chill. The creaking wood beneath their feet echoed into the darkness, and an unsettling silence enveloped them. Suddenly, the tranquility shattered as a monstrous creature erupted from the shadows, lunging up the stairs with a ferocious speed that left no time for caution. The creature was a grotesque amalgamation. A woman's upper body crowned with serpents for hair, their scales glistening in the dim light, and a lower half that coiled and writhed like a massive snake. Its deadly sharp nails glinted menacingly as it lunged forward, and the crows barely had time to react before they were thrown across the room, crashing into the cold stone walls. Harry, dazed but quick to recover, pushed himself off the ground and scrambled to his feet. "This is bad magic," he shouted, recognizing the type of sorcery that summoned such a beast. This old man must be a formidable wizard to call forth something this powerful from a simple spell. The monster twisted and writhed, its gaze fixed on them with a predatory hunger. Jack and Rabbit's foot rose cautiously, instinctively forming a line of defense as they prepared to attack. "We need to work together," Jack yelled, adrenaline surging through him. "Aim for the head." With a burst of speed, the creature darted toward them, its movements almost hypnotic. Rabbit's foot swung a chair at it, but the creature slithered out of reach, striking back with lightning speed. It slashed at him with its claws, but he narrowly dodged, the sharp nails grazing his arm and drawing blood. "Stay back!" Harry shouted, summoning a surge of energy within him. He thrust his hands forward, conjuring a fireball that burst forth with a brilliant light, illuminating the room in an eerie glow. The fireball collided with the creature, knocking it back against the wall. For a fleeting moment, victory seemed within reach as the monster stumbled, but Harry quickly felt a searing pain course through him. "What the?" he gasped, realizing the pain he inflicted upon the creature was mirrored within himself. "It's too strong," Jack yelled, panic creeping into his voice as the creature regained its footing, fury emanating from its serpentine form. "We need to get out of here." With determination, Harry pushed the creature back with another blast of fire, forcing it to retreat momentarily. "Run!" he shouted, sprinting down the staircase into the basement, closely followed by Jack and Rabbit's foot. They slammed the door shut behind them, sealing themselves away from the chaos above. Meanwhile, Constantine turned back to the creature, heart racing. He needed to finish what had begun. "I can't let it escape," he yelled, charging toward the monster as it prepared a foe. But without his magic, he felt at a disadvantage. The monster lunged at him, sharp claws slicing through the air, and Constantine barely dodged, rolling to the side. He struggled to find a weapon, anything he could use to defend himself against this powerful foe. The fight was fierce, and he realized that brute strength alone wouldn't win this battle. Just as it seemed he was losing ground, a sudden flash of movement caught his eye. Harlequina, who had stealthily slipped into the house, launched a surprise attack from behind. With grace and precision, she struck, her daggers finding their mark as she opened massive slashes along the monster's back and neck. "Hey there," she called out, her voice laced with a fierce energy. "Mind if I join the party?" Constantine, momentarily stunned, watched as Harlequina delivered the final blow, her blades flashing in the dim light. The creature let out a chilling shriek, thrashing in pain before collapsing to the ground, lifeless. "Thank you for saving my life," Constantine said, breathing heavily as he looked at her, relief flooding his features. Harlequina straightened, her eyes sharp with focus. "This is far from over. We need to find the others before more surprises show up. Can you guide me to where they went?" Constantine nodded, gathering his composure. "They went down the secret staircase. We need to move quickly." Together, they raced down the hidden stairs, the air growing thicker with tension as they braced themselves for the unknown lurking in the darkness below. As they descended, the oppressive blackness enveloped them, but soon a faint glow caught their attention. A weak lantern flickered in the distance, illuminating a corner of the basement. Harlequina squinted against the dim light and spotted Jack frantically searching for Trickerium. "Jack!" Constantine called, rushing toward him. As he approached, he noticed Harry and Rabbit struggling to get up from the floor, as if they had just been struck down by an unseen force. Constantine hurried to their aid, concern etched across his features. "What happened?" he asked, glancing between them. Rabbit shouted into the dark, his voice filled with urgency. "This is all a misunderstanding. We're not here to steal anything. None of us have ever been here before." From the shadows, Trickerium's voice boomed, dripping with disdain. "I'm no fool. I almost caught a boy stealing from my house last week, but he got away. And now he's back with his friends to pilfer my treasures." "Old man, you're confused," Rabbit replied, his tone firm yet calm. "Are you stuck in this house? What's going on with you? There's something evil happening here, and you may not be aware of it. We're here to help." Trickerium let out a deep, mocking laugh. "Help? I need no help. I know exactly what's going on here." Just as he spoke, a magic fireball erupted from the shadows, striking Harlequina and knocking her to the side before she could react. "Harlequina!" Jack shouted, rushing to her side, but in the chaos, Trickerium darted around her and made a beeline for the stairs. "Get back here!" Jack yelled, but it was too late. The old man reached the top and locked the door behind him, trapping the group in the basement. Rabbit clenched his fists, the reality of their situation sinking in. "I have no other options," he muttered under his breath. "Watch my back." Harry, still catching his breath, asked, "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to summon help," Rabbit replied, determination etched on his face. "Is that wise?" Constantine questioned, brow raised. Rabbit hesitated, weighing the consequences. "No, but I'm running out of options." Jack, always the loyal companion, chimed in, "We'll help you if things go south. Just tell us what to do." The group settled in a circle on the cold floor, tension rising as Rabbit began to prepare for the ritual. With deep breaths, he focused on the ancient incantations, recalling the old ways to summon Samias, the demon he had bartered with long ago. Memories of the day he acquired the Millennium Ring from the Deadlands flooded his mind, the bittersweet taste of that powerful deal mingled with the fear of what it might cost him now. As he initiated the summoning, the air around them thickened with energy, and Rabbit could feel the weight of the ancient magic pulling at him. "Samias, I call upon you," he intoned, his voice steady yet tinged with urgency. "I seek your aid." Silence fell over the group as they waited, anticipation crackling in the air. But moments stretched into an eternity, and Rabbit began to doubt. Just when he thought all hope was lost, a high-pitched laughter echoed through the basement, sending chills down his spine. "Ah, I see you're trying to summon my old friend," the unbodied voice taunted, swirling through the shadows. "But Samias will not come tonight." Rabbit felt a mixture of relief and frustration. "Then who are you? Can you help me?" "Yes, for a price," the voice replied, its tone smooth and seductive. "You may call me the Dark One for tonight." Rabbit's heart raced as he processed the implications of this entity. "What price?" The Dark One's laughter echoed through the shadows, a sound that sent shivers down Rabbit's spine. "What is it that you want?" "I want a way out of here for me and my friends," Rabbit declared, desperation fueling his resolve. The Dark One laughed louder, the sound reverberating ominously around him. "That's easy, then. You must leave this house and every ounce of power within it behind." Rabbit frowned, confusion creeping into his expression. "Is that all you want?" "Yes," the Dark One confirmed, its voice dripping with malevolence. "A way out for you and 4 of your friends." Rabbit quickly performed a head count in his mind: Jack, Harlequina, Harry, Constantine, Trickerium, and the woman Constantine had come to rescue. "But I can't leave anyone behind," he thought, anxiety gnawing at his stomach. Constantine turned to him, urgency in his gaze. "Take the deal, Rabbit. You can't afford to be stuck here." "What about the woman?" Harlequina asked, her brows knitting together in concern. "She's part of this too," isn't she? Constantine's expression hardened. That's my problem now. I shouldn't have dragged you into this incredibly dangerous mission. It's too late for her, but you need to get out. Rabbit hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on his shoulders. But if I leave her behind? Rabbit, Constantine insisted, his voice firm. You need to take the deal. We can't risk losing you all. You need to leave with Trickerium, Jack, Harry, and Harlequina. That's the only way out. Harry's eyes widened in alarm. Wait. If he takes that deal, it means you'll be stuck here, Constantine. God knows what could happen to you. Constantine smiled wryly, the shadows dancing across his face. I have my tricks, Harry. But right now, Rabbit needs to make a choice. This is about survival. Rabbit felt the pressure mounting, the Dark One's presence looming like a dark cloud above him. A safe passage for Rabbit and 4 of his friends, he repeated, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. Jack, Harry, Harlequina, and Trickerium. He hesitated once more, the conflict raging inside him. What if this is a trap? What if I'm making a deal with the wrong devil? But as the silence stretched, the laughter of the Dark One echoed ominously in his ears, a persuasive whisper that felt inescapable. I agree, Rabbit finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. Excellent, the Dark One exclaimed, its voice a serpentine hiss, dripping with satisfaction. The laughter echoed again, sending a shiver down Rabbit's spine. Suddenly, from the pile of rubbish beside them, a powerful gust of wind blew through, knocking a cracked mirror to the ground at Rabbit's feet. The glass glimmered in the dim light, and the Dark One's voice surged back, commanding and clear. Make the old man see the truth of his reality and leave with your friends, and nothing else. Do this, and you can survive the night. As the words settled over Rabbit, the weight of his decision bore down on him. The Dark One was an evil entity, skilled in persuasion, and it felt as though he had no other option but to comply. His pulse quickened, and the gravity of the situation tightened around him like a vice. Rabbit's words hung in the air, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. The group was on edge, but there was no turning back. Their next steps were set: break the illusion, confront Trickerium, and somehow escape the curse that the house had become. As they gathered their mirrors, the anxiety in the air thickened. Harlequina's fingers nervously traced the edges of her own mirror as she glanced over at Constantine. Her worry was palpable. Constantine, she whispered, stepping closer to him, are you really sure you want to stay behind? Constantine, usually so composed, didn't mask the flicker of doubt that crossed his features. He could feel the power of the house draining him, his magic slipping further away with every passing moment. But there was no way out for him. I don't have much choice, Harlequina. The Dark One's deal is binding. I can't leave with you. But I'll make sure the way is clear for the rest of you. Her jaw tightened. I don't care what you say, I'm not leaving you behind. Not like this. I can't change it, Constantine said, his voice quiet, but his eyes, hardened by years of dealing with the darkest forces in Darkfall, betrayed a sharp edge. And neither can you. I've made my peace. She took a deep breath, nodding though her heart was heavy. We'll be back for you, Constantine. As the group made their way through the darkened house, the atmosphere grew suffocating. Down in the basement, the sense of dread was palpable, thick enough to almost taste. Harry's usual calm and logical demeanor began to fray as he stepped further into the musty, dark space. His eyes darted across the room, scanning every inch of the space. There was something about the basement, the cold, oppressive stillness, that unnerved him more than anything. But as his gaze shifted to a set of ornate coffins tucked into the corner, his stomach churned. Rabbit, he called, his voice low but heavy with tension. Take a look at this. Rabbit stepped forward, examining the coffins with a detached curiosity. What is it? He asked, though the uneasy feeling in his chest was growing. He hated this place more by the minute. Harry's fingers hovered over the labels on the coffins, Miriam and Bella. He turned to Rabbit, his voice almost a whisper. These are names, Rabbit. But there's something off about them. These are more than just names, they're lives. Rabbit swallowed hard, unable to shake the nagging feeling in the back of his mind. We're all paying a price here, Harry. You think this old man didn't? Every bargain has its consequences. The longer they waited, the more Jack's frustration grew. He hated the tension that was slowly suffocating them all, and the house was no exception. It felt like it was closing in around them. As they reached the top of the basement stairs, Jack's patience snapped. With a loud grunt of frustration, Jack kicked the door down. The loud crash echoed throughout the house, reverberating off the rotting walls. Enough of this, he shouted, his voice a mixture of rage and panic. This damn house. I've had enough. Harlequina winced at the sound of the door splintering. Jack, what the hell are you? But Jack was already moving, storming past her and Constantine, his temper barely contained. We need to get this over with. There's nothing left here. It's all just a sick game. Watch your step, Jack, Constantine warned, his tone strained. We still have to find Trickerium, and if you make too much noise, it might get us all killed. Jack shot him a glance, the fire in his eyes barely contained. I don't care, Constantine. We need answers. Now. As Jack stormed off, Harlequina couldn't help but glance at Constantine. She knew Jack's brashness came from a place of fear, but still, his volatility unnerved her. The situation was far more precarious than they let on. She caught up with Constantine, her expression softening. Do you really think we're going to make it out of this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper, the weight of her words hanging heavily in the air. Constantine's eyes darkened as he glanced at her. I don't know, Harlequina. But sometimes, there's nothing left to do but fight through it. Now if we can finish what we started. Meanwhile, upstairs, Harry and Rabbit moved cautiously into the main bedroom. The room was a stark contrast to the chaos of the rest of the house. Everything in the room was pristine, immaculate even. The furniture gleamed under the soft light, and the bed was perfectly made, with the sheets smooth as glass. There was no rot, no sign of age. The room exuded a chilling perfection, one that only added to the unnerving atmosphere of the house. Harry's eyes scanned the space, trying to make sense of the dissonance between what they had seen downstairs and the perfection around them. It all felt wrong. Harry froze as his gaze fell on the bed. Two pillows rested on the mattress, perfectly aligned. He approached them, his heart beginning to race. The names stitched into the fabric were undeniable, Vincent and Miriam. Harry's throat tightened. His voice was low, filled with dread. Rabbit, look at this, he said, pointing to the pillows. Vincent. Miriam. These names, they're tied to everything. To Trickerium's obsession with his past. Rabbit approached, his brows furrowing in confusion. He leaned closer, his eyes studying the names. It's all connected, isn't it? The illusion, the deal, the people who died here. But who the hell is Vincent? Harry's expression hardened, and he turned to face Rabbit. We're not the only ones who are still trapped here, he muttered, his voice low and heavy. All these ghosts, Trickerium included. They're stuck in a never-ending cycle. Rabbit's gaze turned dark as he processed the implication. He clenched his fists, his mind already formulating the next move. We need to get to him. We need to make him see the truth. There's no way out for him until he does. Before they could take another step, a flash of light near the corner of the room caught Harry's eye. He barely had time to react when a fireball crashed into them from nowhere, the force knocking them both off their feet. The blast sent Harry crashing against the wall, gasping as the heat seared through his clothes. Damn it, he shouted, blinking the smoke away. Trickerium. He's here, Rabbit. He's invisible, but the moment he uses magic, he shows himself. Rabbit gritted his teeth and pushed himself up, his eyes scanning the shadows, but Trickerium remained out of sight. Trickerium, listen to me, he shouted into the room. This is all an illusion. You're living in a trap. A lie. His voice echoed through the space, but there was no immediate response, only the oppressive stillness of the room. Then, from outside the door, heavy footsteps approached. Jack, Constantine, and Harlequina emerged into the hallway, their expressions grim. We've got him trapped in here, but we can't see him, Constantine murmured, his voice laced with tension. Old man. Jack yelled, stepping toward the door, his usual bravado cracking the silence. We know you're in here. You can't hide from us. Look into the damn mirror. Jack flashed the mirror, the faint reflection catching the light as he waved it. Filthy thieves. Trickerium's voice boomed from the shadows, dripping with venom. You dare invade my home, my sanctuary? You will regret this. You will all die here. His words were laced with malice, his anger palpable in the air. Harry stepped forward, pushing his fear down. Trickerium. Look at the mirror, he shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. It's time you saw the truth. Constantine stepped closer to the bed, his eyes locking onto the pillow with the name Miriam stitched into it. His mind worked quickly, piecing things together. Miriam. Bella, who are they? Constantine asked, his voice filled with urgency. Are they dead? For a moment, there was no response, only silence. Then, Trickerium's voice came back, hoarse and trembling with rage. Keep their names out of your mouth, he roared. They were mine. They are mine. You know nothing of this. Constantine's voice remained calm, but there was a steel in it now. You tried to bring them back, didn't you? That's why all of this is happening. The magic, the illusions, the ghosts, you've been chasing an impossible dream. Trickerium's response was instantaneous, a shriek of fury that tore through the room. No, he bellowed, his voice cracking. This wasn't part of the deal. Before anyone could react, a burst of energy erupted from nowhere, slamming into Constantine with enough force to throw him back against the wall. No. Do not speak their names. Trickerium shouted, his voice wild. And then, just as quickly as he had appeared, he vanished into thin air again. Constantine. Harlequina cried, rushing to his side. Rabbit wasn't about to let this go on any longer. He yanked the mirror out, holding it in front of the room. The light caught Trickerium's eyes for just a fraction of a second, and in that moment, Rabbit shouted, Look! See the truth! The truth of your illusion. Suddenly, the silence was broken by Trickerium's frantic gasping. No. No, it's not possible, he muttered, his voice trembling with fear and disbelief. It's not possible. He repeated over and over, his tone growing more desperate with each utterance. Then, with a shimmer of magic, Trickerium reappeared, his hands gripping the mirror, his face a mask of horror and confusion. You. He gasped, staring into the reflection. His features twisted with a sickening realization as he looked at his own frail, aging reflection. This wasn't our deal. His voice broke, and for the first time, the old man looked vulnerable. But before anyone could move, Trickerium screamed in rage and lashed out, knocking Jack to the ground with a wave of force. He clutched the mirror, his gaze frenzied as he dashed out of the room, disappearing into the shadows once again. In his place, a massive bear materialized out of thin air. The beast's growls reverberated through the room as it bared its teeth, claws extending, ready to tear them all apart. Oh no, not again. Rabbit cursed, eyes wide. Run! Harry screamed, pulling Rabbit toward the door. He summoned that bear. We can't fight it. Let's get out of here. With no time to waste, they dashed out of the room, the sound of the bear's roar echoing behind them. As they reached the door, Harry slammed it shut, locking the beast inside. They could hear it thrashing on the other side, furious at being trapped. Harlequina glanced back at the door, her expression grim. That won't hold for long. We need to move now. Jack's already gone after him, Constantine said, glancing back at the others. Let's just hope he can keep up with Trickerium. The group moved swiftly, knowing the hunt wasn't over. The chaos was far from finished, and the old man they were chasing had just unleashed a new nightmare upon them. Downstairs was Trickerium, after finishing the summoning ritual and talking to the Dark One. No. You promised me. A life with my family. Immortality. You promised. Trickerium's voice cracked with rage. His hands balled into fists. I've killed for you. 27 souls. All for this. The Dark One's voice came from the shadows, cold and unbothered. You wanted life, Trickerium. A life with your family. I gave you immortality. It was all real, for you. Trickerium's face twisted in disbelief, his eyes darting around his perfectly maintained home. The truth began to sink in, and his chest tightened. This isn't real, he yelled, stumbling back. It's all an illusion. My wife, my daughter, they're not real. None of this is real. The Dark One's voice remained steady, like a final truth. You wanted this. You wanted to live forever with them. I gave you that. But you never asked for the truth. This is the life you asked for. Trickerium's hands trembled as he looked around, his anger mixing with a rising sense of betrayal. I've been living in a lie. All of it. The house, my family, everything I thought I had is gone. It was all fake. The group, Jack, Harry, Rabbit, Constantine, and Harlequina, stood at the entrance, watching in tense silence, realizing they had been part of Trickerium's illusion for longer than they had known. Each of them could feel the weight of the truth, and it became clear, Trickerium had been trapped in a world of his own making. 27 lives, Rabbit muttered under his breath. He really thought he was getting it all back. Constantine's gaze hardened, eyes focused on Trickerium as he collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed by the enormity of his mistake. We need to stop him before he destroys himself completely. But Trickerium's fury flared again as he turned on the Dark One. I gave you everything. His voice cracked with desperation. And this is the price. For nothing. Nothing but lies. The Dark One's voice came once more, dismissive. You wanted perfection, Trickerium. I gave it to you. You wanted your family back. But the price was always the truth. You were never meant to have it all. The tension was palpable as Trickerium's body shook with the force of his realization. His rage gave way to a moment of clarity, and he looked around at the remnants of his world, his perfect house, his family, his life, all evaporating in an instant. The reflection of his crumbling reality hit him like a punch to the gut. I've wasted 5 years, Trickerium whispered, the anger in his voice turning to a hollow despair. This isn't what I bargained for. With a look of grim resolve, he turned toward the mirror and screamed, I'm done with this. I'm breaking the contract. Then he spoke out loud a word, in a language that none present could understand. It sounded ancient and intimidating. The words exploded from his lips, shaking the very foundation of the house. The walls groaned as the illusions shattered, and the pristine house began to decay in front of everyone. The vision of his family faded, leaving nothing but emptiness. Trickerium fell to the floor, his body aging in an instant. His muscles shrank, his skin sagged, and his bones became visible beneath his fragile form. The house continued to collapse around them, its perfection crumbling away, leaving only a shadow of what had been. Trickerium, now a frail, malnourished old man, sat amidst the destruction, the weight of his choices bearing down on him. "I deserve this," he whispered, his voice barely a breath. The Dark One's laughter echoed coldly through the ruins. "You wanted the truth, Trickerium. Well, here it is. Everything you held dear, everything you thought was yours, is nothing. You were never meant to have it. You were never meant to live forever. Now you see the price of trying to cheat the natural order." As the reality of the house around them continued to decay, the group stepped forward, each of them processing the enormity of what had just unfolded. They had all been part of the illusion, trapped in a world where Trickerium had desperately tried to undo his past, but they now saw the truth. This house, this life, was all a twisted reflection of his regret. Harry took a deep breath, his voice soft. "We've all been stuck in his fantasy, caught in the same illusion." Rabbit nodded, his gaze dark. "But this is the price of trying to bring the dead back. It was never meant to be." They stood in silence, the weight of the truth settling over them as the house around them collapsed further into ruin. As the house continued to fall into silence, Harry turned to Rabbit, his voice full of confusion and lingering dread. "Rabbit, did you understand the word Trickerium shouted to break the contract? What did it mean?" Rabbit, his focus still on the frail form of Trickerium, shook his head slowly. "I don't know exactly what it means. But I think it's the real name of the Dark One. Some demonic contracts can be broken by simply fulfilling one condition, one word. It's something that needs to be studied more carefully." The group gathered around Trickerium, who lay breathing heavily, his body visibly withering. Jack knelt beside him, his eyes scanning Trickerium's condition. "He's still alive, barely. But he looks like he's running out of time." Rabbit crouched down, speaking softly to Trickerium. "Do I have permission to move you to our hospital in Crowsfoot? We'll try to help you, but I can't promise much." Trickerium weakly nodded, the faintest glimmer of recognition in his eyes. Rabbit's voice softened. "I promise, if you don't make it, we'll make sure it's painless." Constantine stood back, watching them all with his eyes now hollow, his expression distant. "No one should tamper with the natural order of things. The dead stay dead," he said, his words carrying the weight of someone who had long accepted his fate. Harlequina stepped back, her heart sinking as she stared at Constantine's transparent form. "Constantine." Her voice wavered with panic. You're transparent. What's happening to you?" Constantine glanced down at himself, his form flickering with a faint glow. He gave a hollow laugh, his voice tinged with quiet acceptance. "Yeah, well, that's about right." He turned to face them all, his smile a ghost of what it once was. "There's nothing you can do to save me. I'm getting what I deserve. This is the price I've paid. But I'm at peace with it now. Goodbye, everyone." He looked at Jack last, his expression softening. "Jack," he said, his voice warm despite his fading presence, "the old man, Trickerium, he's got a stash hidden around here somewhere. A cache. Consider it payment for your help. You earned it." Jack smiled, his nod subtle. "I'll find it. Don't worry." Rabbit stepped closer, hand outstretched, but as he reached for Constantine's hand, his fingers passed straight through the ghostly figure. He paused, looking at Constantine, who exhaled a small puff of smoke. "I wish I could have a smoke," Constantine murmured, and before anyone could respond, the Dark One appeared beside him, lighting a cigarette for him. Constantine took the cigarette with a sigh, lighting it, his fingers shaking slightly. He took a deep drag and blew out the smoke with a soft laugh. "Let go already, you wanker," he muttered to the Dark One, his voice still carrying some of his old sharpness. The Dark One, cold and unfeeling, responded with an echo of a smile. "You and your 4 friends can go. Leave the house for me. Don't come back." Rabbit nodded solemnly, turning to Trickerium. "As agreed." He gently lifted Trickerium into his arms, his gaze hardening with resolve as he turned to leave. Harlequina lingered for a moment, her eyes locked on Constantine, her heart heavy with grief. She stepped closer to him, her voice soft, yet desperate. "Is there any way we can contact you again? Or maybe, save you?" Constantine laughed, a bitter sound that echoed through his fading form. "Save me? Hardly, my dear," he said, his voice softening with a hint of sardonic humor. "But Madame Webb might be able to help you with the long-distance call." Harlequina blinked, bewildered by his response. Constantine gave her one last smile, the light in his eyes flickering out, as his form began to fade completely. As the last remnants of Constantine's presence vanished into the air, Harlequina turned to look at the Dark One, standing ominously in the shadows. The Dark One glanced at her briefly, his eyes cold and empty, before shifting his attention back to Rabbit and his companions. "You're free to leave, as we agreed. Leave this house for me. Don't return." Rabbit, holding Trickerium carefully, nodded, a quiet determination in his voice. "We'll go. And we won't come back." Harlequina, her heart breaking, took one last look at the space where Constantine had stood. The reality of the situation weighed heavily on her. "Goodbye," she whispered, and with that, they stepped away from the house, carrying Trickerium and leaving the ghosts of the past behind. The Dark One's chilling laughter echoed one final time as the group made their way into the unknown, uncertain of what the future would bring but certain that they had left something dangerous behind.